All right, these are your 3-4 notes. This is the front page. You're just going to practice what we've been doing. For number 1, I need you to write the domain and then the range from these numbers right here, and then tell me if it's a function, yes or no. In number 2, before you can figure out the domain and range, you need to label the points where they're located. So like this first point is -2, 2. So you'll need to label all your points. Then you can get the domain, the range, and yes or no if it's a function. Number 3, our domain, we can see that it's going on forever, a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. So we're going to use our gang sign, all real numbers. For the range, though, there's a limit to how high it can go. Y is going to have to be less than or equal to what? So I need you to figure out what it's the highest it can go. And then is it a function, yes or no? Number 4, this has limits. So your inequalities are going to look like x is less than or equal to something. So for the limits for the x, the farthest to the left it goes would be like this far. So that's a -2. The farthest to the right it would go is 1, 2, 3, 4 is 4. You do the same thing for the x's, for the tallest or the lowest still go and the highest still to go, and then tell me if it's a function, yes or no. When you're finished with this page, flip over to the next one. On this page, we're going to graph functions. We're going to get an equation. This one at the example happens to be 2x minus 3. And every time we see an x, we're going to rewrite the equation, and we're going to use one of these numbers in our table. So let's just do a little practice and figure it out. Always put parentheses around your x number. So y is going to equal 2, because that's what it says first, parentheses. Instead of writing an x, I write -1, and then I just write -3. When you type that straight up into your calculator, you get a -5. Now, we're going to do the exact same thing, except this time, instead of the -1, we're going to put a 0 in the parentheses. 2 times 0 minus 3, and we would get a -3. 2, instead of the 0 or the -1, we're going to write that 2 times 2 minus 3 is a 1. 2, instead of the x, we're writing a 4, minus 3 is 5. Now, we're going to take the x and y information and graph it. Left 1 down 5 for the first point, 0 down 3 for the second point, and 2, 1 for the third, and 4, 5. And then I just draw my line. If your dots do not make a straight line, you have either done your table wrong or graphed it wrong. You need to go back and check it. Everything on this page is going to make a straight line. We're going to go through this page and do an example for each one, and I'll give you a couple numbers to make it a little less work. So, number 1, so our equation we're dealing with is y equals x plus 4. So instead of that x, I'm going to write parenthesis -5 plus 4. -5 plus 4 is a -1. So you'll do the same thing, -4 plus 4. You'll plug -2 plus 4. 0 plus 4. I'll go ahead and tell you this one's going to be a 4. I'm just going to write a couple extras in here so you don't have to do so much work. All right. The next one, my equation is 3/4 x minus 2. So 3/4, instead of the x, I'm going to put my parentheses and I'm going to put this -4 in there, minus 2. When I type that into my calculator, be sure to use the parentheses, I get -5. If I do this one at the bottom, I would do 3/4 parentheses 8 minus 2, and I would get a 4. And just so you're aware, this one right here, you won't be able to put on the graph because it only goes to 5 and that goes to 8. There'll be a couple of those and I'll highlight them for you. Let's look at number 3. All it is 3 times x. So for the first one, I would say 3 times -2. When I do that, I get a -6. If I do this bottom one, 3 times 1, I get a 3. Heads up, this one you won't be able to put on the graph either, but the rest of them on that one you will be able to. All right, let's look at number 4 now. The equation I have is -3/2 times x plus 2. So, -3/2, instead of the x, I'm going to say -2 plus 2. When you type that into your calculator, you end up with a 5. All right. When I do this bottom one down here, -3/2 times 4 plus 2, we end up with a -4. Let's look down at number 5 and 6. Number 5 can be a little tricky because there's this negative sign right here in front of the x. So when you write it, you have to write negative. And then in parentheses, for the first x, we have a -3. And then we write plus 1. So when you type that in your calculator, -3 plus 1, you get a 4. On this, let's look at the bottom one. I always start with the negative. This time it's just a 4 in parentheses plus 1. When I type that in, I get a -3. Number 6, the equation is 1 minus 1/3 times x. 1 minus 1/3 times our x in the first one is -3. That's a -3, sorry. When I type that in my calculator, I get a 2. Let's do the bottom one. 1 minus 1/3 times 6. When I type that in, I get a -1. This one, you will not be able to graph either because it won't fit on the graph. So on this paper, you need to fill in all the boxes that I did not fill in for you. So all these middle boxes for each one. And then you need to plot your points and graph them, all except the ones that are in green. So for number 1, then after you figured out your other 2 points, we'd graph -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1. That's your first point. Then you put the rest of the points and draw a line wherever it ends up. All right, do these 2 pages and show them to me.